to Brazil, Lucas works in a lot of CrossFit gyms, which sound like they're similar.
I would assume they'd just be similar, yeah.
You can just do whatever. Things will...
Yeah.
Yeah, you can take your shirt off, which I'm
I love just the fact that they've got all these cool like setups already, like whether it be rings or parallel bars of different heights and full Olympic.
Yeah, that's nice as well.
Full Olympic parallel like bars and stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I could get used to something like that as well. Oh, and high pull-up bars, you know. Even the one at the gym that I'm at, I was doing some pull-ups yesterday, is just...
Not tall enough for you.
No, I still have to kind of tuck my toes in. It's still reachable slightly. If it was an extra 5 centimeters, it would be good. But then they've got the shade cloth on top, so if you want to do muscle ups, you have to bend your head. You know,
Damn, even I have to fucking bend my head for that.
It's surprising the little things that can kind of bother you a bit when you're...
It's beautiful when everything's just... That's probably where it's not the... It's definitely not the... What do you call it? The 20% that makes the 80%. Like, from the Pareto principle of, 20% of the effort makes 80% of the value, whatever it may be. It's like... That's the opposite. That you're putting like all this. There's like all this extra effort being for a tiny percent of extra value, but you could really tell about. Like that's where I want that extra value. Where
they're thinking, oh, we're going to do reform Pilates. We're going to have this awesome setup. We're going to make this so streamlined. 5 classes a day, that sort of thing. And I'm here just going, I just want some space, people. I just want some.
Well, actually, there's 2 things. One, the CrossFit gym, right? So obviously they've got heaps of equipment and I can kind of walk around and do whatever at the place. But also, I was talking to the owner of the other gym I go to, and he's had that gym for, I think he said 11 years, I think he said.
OG. Hello, Juan speaking. Just going to pause that. And we'll get started in whenever Juan's done with his phone call. Basically. So, yes, everyone at home. Well, I assume you're at home. Could be anywhere in the world. I hope you like the thumbnail that I did for today. More words, more problems. I got a kick out of creating that. That was fun. Now, are you trying to learn a new language? If so, which one? I'm learning German. Yay. Now, you might be asking, Karen, how much German have you been speaking? Because one of your goals was actually to speak more of the German. And I can tell you, I've had 2 German conversations in this last year, which is somewhat abysmal if you're looking at it from the yearly goal perspective, which was to focus on the conversation aspect. But I've come to a realization, and it was actually thinking about this topic, musing on this topic, in fact, which made me go, I know why this is so hard and why I'm not really doing it. So stay tuned for that. More to come on that respect. Is there anything else I want to chat about? Not really. I've been enjoying doing the Value for Value podcast. So for those who don't know what that is, it's a one which I do kind of intermittently. Usually it's about 18 or 19 episodes a season and I've done 2 seasons of that now. I'm into the 3rd one. I think I'm 4 or 5 episodes deep into that, which I've been really enjoying and surprisingly enjoying. And it's when I start to focus on value for value is where I can see all the overlaps with everything in everyday life. Is one of those ones where I think I'm going to have to do this for years until I'm able to describe it succinctly, to be able to say exactly what I want to say. Because I was talking with my brother last night, and he was saying, like, what's with this value for value thing? Why I don't really get it. Why are you so deep into it? And I think it's because it's a culmination of so many different things, of its philosophy, which is stuff that I really enjoy, but it's also how would I describe it? It's kind of the way, it's almost like my own personal ethics, and I see this being as a way to improve them and to make them better, and at least in a large sense, not every sense, but in a large sense, I think it can help out. I hear Awani walking up the steps, so we will get started in a couple of minutes, maybe 1 minute, in fact. Ding, ding, ding. Over here. Actually, you were talking about the PayPal before, and I should just check it.
Oh, you might as well.
Models podcast. I need to do a better thing for this, because when I log in, I'm pretty sure it asks me for a one-time code, and I need to set up a password. But I'll do that not whilst I'm going live.
Oh, gotcha.
Is a recipe for disaster. Okay. Okay, I'm in, people. What's the activity going on? No activity.
Woo!
Automatic payments, none. Status, none. I'm pretty sure. Wallet. If I go to the wallet, imagine if we just had 5 Bitcoin just sitting there. No. No dice, nothing going on there, so I don't need to look at that. Cool. You ready to...
Let's do it.
To do it? Oh, okay. I'm going to hit the button. I'm going to do it.
Rock and roll.
Okay, it's going.
Ooh, welcome back, Mere Mortalites. It is the 2nd of August, 2023. We are here at 7 p.m. live for Musings. You got one on the side.
Kyron here.
Now, Musings is once again a time when we do these conversations live. First of all, we talk about a particular topic. It's a little bit different to our meanderings. We can meander around things that we've been thinking about. Musings is specialized. We're only talking about one certain thing.
And effective philosophy.
And we've been generally tagging them off the back of the end of the last Musings as well, which is kind of good. So stick around if you actually want to listen into what the next week's podcast is going to be. You're going to have to stick towards the end to actually listen in, as well as how you can support us and everything else. But off the back of last week, we were talking about curiosity. And there was an aspect of it that triggered language learning. And so I wanted to get into today. We've talked about the subject in differing ways, more specifically around how we might approach language learning right now based on everything that we sort of learned in the past, either hot tips that we've found, how we would be tackling different things, maybe anything around the aspect of language learning, maybe the conversation around polyglot or polymath, and if you agree or disagree with such a statement or a saying.
Yeah, I've talked enough about the stratagems that I think are useful. So broadly, I'll cover what these are, but I think I'll focus more on the difficulties of language learning. For what my section, my notes are.
Yeah, look, mine not so much the strategies, because I think you can find better strategies elsewhere, right? I'm not going to go and recap. We're not going to be coming here in the Immortals like, oh, here's the strategies of what to do. There's other ways. I wanted to approach the practicalities, like the realities, the practicalities of language learning, and maybe the difficulties that we can get into on that front. But I wanted to ask you, because you made the statement off the last podcast. Why don't you like the polyglot or the polymath All
right, you want to get into it straight away?
Yeah, I want to hear why not. Why I hold no bias here. I'm neutral in the camp of this particular word.
So this is getting into people being people. My notes here about the people who, some trends I've noticed across people who learn languages as adults in particular. And polyglottery does not hide assholery.
Ooh.
And so I haven't come away from any of the events that I've been to. So this is in real life events like Mundolingo or Spanish language exchanges, or even just general language exchanges. I've been to quite a few now, various sorts, as I just mentioned, ones which are specific and ones which aren't. I've never come away going, man, that was a cool person. I'm glad I went to that and met this person. And because I've been to so many now, I feel like I can generalize about the type of people that go there. And then I'll transfer this as well onto some of the learnings, the teachers that I've I've
cool.
noticed as well over just the years of looking at the kind of polyglot community. And so I don't like the vibes of them nor the teachers. And I think I can pin it down to arrogance. I feel like there's a bit of arrogance going on with language learners who are learning as adults. And so the word itself, the polyglot, just straight up reminds me of gluttony, one of the 7 deadly sins. And, you know, this is where the pride as well is coming in. And I can kind of get it. I feel it's somewhat justified to maybe think you're better than other people because it's hard as balls to learn as an adult. Learning a language as an adult is an impressive feat. And if you can learn 5 of them,
can you qualify that? Can you qualify to a particular level? Like, what do you mean?
I would be saying A1 level.
Okay.
So below fluent, but A1 is very conversational. You're pretty good.
Yep.
And yeah,
which would you say just to put it in my context, you would be that for Spanish, but not in German?
My Spanish is probably B2 to A1.
Okay.
Bordering on that, if I had to guess.
Okay.
My German, I would say I'm at the C2 level. So it kind of goes C1, absolute beginner, you know shit. C2, you can ask basic questions. You can maybe have a stalled conversation. B1 is where you're getting into, okay, I can get around. I can probably have a 20-minute conversation, something like that. You're still going to say things wrong. B2 is when you're getting into, okay, it's flowing, it's pretty good, but you're still making basic errors. You're saying los chicas instead of las chicas, things like that. A1, I believe, is you're pretty damn good. You can do a kind of like a work context. You'd be able to work in a company and be able to say things professionally and not have any troubles with that. And then A2 is just straight up fluent. You know the slang, you know the lingo, you know.
Well, and just
I think that's basically.
And just to qualify for people, maybe just it'll help them be more as because maybe we've never actually said this before. I would say I'm A2 English, A1 Spanish, and C2, maybe even C1 French at the moment.
Correct,
right?
Yeah.
That's basically where we'd be at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. So what I've just noticed with all of that was, one, to get to that level, it's really, really hard. So there's just been something about the people, the way they present things, the way they talk about things at all of these events. And I know I'm generalizing here, but I've done enough.
You've seen
work.
the pattern.
I've seen enough to go, I think there's something here, which is weird because personally, I find it pretty humbling to try and learn another language, or at least there's aspects of that. There's been times where I have a conversation, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm the man. You know, I'm speaking, I'm speaking this language which I never knew before with someone, and I'm getting by, and other people who are English are like looking on in shock and
amazement,
and amazement. But then I will say something stupid, or they'll start speaking actually quickly, and I go, or it gets into outside of the 20 minutes, which I really know how to nail down. I really know how to talk about why my Spanish is so good, because I've repeated that so many times.
Yep.
Latina America, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. Here's one for you. Are we going to become dickheads? Are we going to become prideful, arrogant if we do get, I think like the more languages you get, the more, or it's maybe a cap or like a bell curve. You get to like 3 or 4 and you think you're hot shit. And then if you get to 7, 8, 10, you're like a savant.
I was kind of thinking about this because there's a propensity, if you are learning more than whatever languages, 4 languages, 5 languages, you're either using it for work context. So perhaps you're someone who requires to know a lot of languages from a work perspective. That's one. Perhaps you are trying to become a teacher or make money throughout it. Maybe that's another one. But then there's, this type of people, the polyglots. And it's not that the word itself annoys me.
There's something about that word as well. It's not just that, but it's...
I've also met enough people, not as probably as many from a language speaking type of community, but enough that I've seen to go, they seem to be assholes. Yeah, they seem to be annoying in some manner. But almost in an annoying sense. Yeah,
asshole's a strong word.
It's annoying in the sense of how perhaps one person might become, I don't know, a real expert at 8 different fantasy leagues of different sports and not like, pulling out all the little details. it kind of becomes annoying. Okay, I don't want to know about all this freaking detail. And they'll generally throw it in your face in the sense like, oh, by the way, I spoke French to my son this weekend, and then I spoke German, and then I spoke Russian, and then, it's...
I'm wondering if it's the events more than anything else, because there was a recent interaction I had, which was a guy and girl at a Bitcoin meetup, and so weren't there for language things, but they were French and El Salvadorian, respectively, or he was from Central America, for sure. And they lived in Italy, and they were here now. So they had 4 languages each, and they were really cool. I really enjoyed speaking with them. So it could be more, if you're going to events that are focused more on this is an event about language exchange, it could be that. Yeah. And once again, arseholery it's a strong word. It's more just, they're kind of weird. I've never vibed with them. I've never gone, this is my community. I'm going to come to this event
neither.
Week in, week out, because these people are so cool. Man, we're having a great time speaking all these languages and doing all these things and you're meeting exciting people. I've never felt that. It's always been, that was okay, but I'm not going to spend effort to come back to out.
Never like super joyous. Yeah. I think, I was just thinking in my mind, it's people might learn languages kind of like for a dress up, kind of like you wear a suit and you wear your nice shoes and you wear your nice belt, so you can see people notice you and notice that you're doing it right. And there can be functional reasons for doing that, or there can be just the aspect of showing off, dressing up. And so if you learn, or you're the type of person who's learning a lot of languages for that reason, for showing off, dressing up, okay, I feel like that's probably going to be the annoying person. But if you're doing it for a functional reason, which I guess I haven't really encountered too many people that are doing it for that purpose, like at a broad amount of languages, generally I would assume that they'd be pretty cool, because there's a functional reason, and it's different to the usual individual as well. So a mere mortal doesn't normally have 8 languages that they know, but if you encountered, I'm sure, someone who, I do that because of work and I do this and I need to know all these languages, or I got brought up and I was living in London and then I went to South Africa and then whatever, and then it's an awesome story that you got to know all these languages. That can make for some good, interesting conversations. But usually, I just kind of default that if you're saying that you're a polyglot or something equivalent, I go, something's fishy here.
Correct.
Something's fishy.
Because we've both met plenty of people, work context-wise. I used to work with a whole bunch of South Americans. You have as well, I know, over the years. And I think polyglot, if you'd have more than one, I don't know if that's just bilingual and then polyglot is 3.
I feel like if someone calls themselves a polyglot and they got 2 languages, that's a massive red sign. That's like, okay, you're an asshole. That's default asshole. Yeah, you're just known as an asshole.
Yeah, for sure. So now that we've both kind of talked about it, so okay, but here's the thing though: have you noticed any trends in yourself of this assholery poking it up? Because I have seen it in myself every now and then, where I kind of want to show off. I've got a couple of language, that I know, Spanish. Oh yeah, and I'm working on German at the moment, and it is those kind of conversations where you see people are trying to force the conversation. I've been guilty of this many times in the past, not related to languages, but also trying to highlight my good points of, like I can do handstands pretty good, or I traveled South America, or I did this, and it's so transparent, but when you're doing it, you don't feel like it's you're pushing the boundaries. Are you afraid that you might become a bit more of an asshole if you go after a 3rd or 4th language?
Yes, I think so. I think so. Well, because my default at the moment is, so I don't know lots of languages in a fluent state. So in example, not even like a C2 state, but I know how to say hello and, hello, my name is, in like 10, 11, 12 different languages, something like that. Sometimes I'll like, when I'm at work, especially in work context, sometimes I'll start the day being like, hola, right? Sometimes I'll do it French, sometimes I'll do it in English, sometimes I'll do it in South African, sometimes like in Afrikaans, sometimes I'll do it in Russian, sometimes I'll just mix it up.
On work emails.
On a work email. Yeah, I'll just be like, whatever, just today is like Afrikaans.
Oh man, people hate you.
And so there'll be some aspects that I'll do that, but it'll just be the one-off. It's not more than that.
Yeah, gotcha.
More so, I guess I do see it sometimes enter conversation when perhaps it doesn't get introduced by them. So with French, for instance, someone was asking me about, you're going to teach your kid Spanish? And I said, yes, and also French. Like I added it myself, and also French, by the way.
Yeah.
And they were like, does your partner speak French? Like, no,
No.
I'm learning it. I'm the one. I'm going to teach them all the languages. So, there's part of that I will kind of do it by default. So I think there's definitely a correlation to the more languages I at least learn, the more it will correlate to showing off with those languages. Absolutely. This is default going to happen. So there's some modulating with it. Does that mean I should just be shit at all the languages and that should help it? Well, I think yes. But it'll be more catching myself, like in generalness. If you're good at something or you're becoming an expert or you're mastering something beyond the mere mortals that you see around you, not to flaunt it, I guess, unless, and more so not using it as dress up, but using it for a functional perspective.
Yeah, this kind of gets into the introspection aspect we were talking about in the latest episode, which was what's one of the most critical skills, just to calling yourself out, keeping you in track with what's truth, what's reality, not making bad decisions, not questioning your own existence and doing rash things, all of that. Introspection helps for that. So my answer was maybe, but it's a trade-off I'm willing to make because the gains that I just straight up really enjoy it sometimes. And the benefits that I get from it, I think, exceed the tendency for me to want to flaunt it, to show it off, to be like that. So but it is something, yes, that I think both of us just need to keep in check as we try and accumulate for a third and fourth, which sounds like you're doing. Yeah, and your goals, right?
And so here's probably sliding into one of the practical tips. Right, I'm talking practicality. We're talking effective philosophy here, which was yes. So it isn't in my annual goals. I actually decided not to put it in as part of my annual goals.
Okay. The
annual goal that I have is centered around reading a book in French, more so because I wanted to get that aspect of, hey, I want to try and do, as I saw you do it with Spanish, and it kind of worked out with a lot of extra words. Again, this maps up to I know Tim Ferriss's view of, learning 1,000 words that are the most commonly used in a particular language. That really helps out. You're generally constructing most of the language based on that. So I kind of wanted to do that. That's kind of a goal. The other one that I had mentioned, and I was kind of toing and froing, was adding Japanese into the annual goals. And I thought, maybe I'd pull it back and say, I'll do one class of essentially keep the Duolingo streak in French alive, do the reading in French, and then try to do Japanese, again, one Duolingo class at a time. But what I find myself in thinking it was this bias of, this is cool, I'm learning a fourth language. And so this comes to the whole premise of learning a language. And I found myself, the more I thought about it, I went, the problem here is this is slightly dress up. This is coming into the dress up or the showing off perspective, because I could likely do one class of Japanese Duolingo class for a whole year, and I'll progress with that. And I'll learn probably to a C2 level, right? Is that the most effective way for me to learn the Japanese? Not really. Am I going to be taking away from the French learning? Absolutely. Am I going to be taking away from other efforts? Absolutely. Ultimately, what's a functionality? And so this is the bias. In doing things, so the practical tip is don't fall into the bias that you're doing it just because you can do it and you want to flaunt it. It's more so, I looked into the future for the year. Am I going to go to Japan or use Japanese over the next year? Not really.
Dang.
There's unlikeliness that I'm going to go there. Is there likelihood that I'm going to go to France? Not either.
And you don't consume manga or
And I don't
anime.
consume manga, although I did, just by absolute chance, was watching... what's that show called?
Record of Ragnarok?
No, it was on Netflix with Bucky and...
Bucky the Grappler?
No. In any case, it's a popular anime on Netflix.
Okay.
It's a Netflix created one. And it was on Japanese. And I went, here, I'm reading the subtitles, but I went, this is kind of cool. It would have been kind of cool. And so it is something that I will ultimately want to do, and I might find myself doing it for fun, but not for the addressing it for learning it right now. So I've kind of parked it in terms of the bias in me would have been, cool, I can just add the extra one and add it on top of it, but it would have been a dress up. It would have been a dress up in terms of saying, hey, I am doing 4 languages, but the reality is you're doing 2 languages badly. That's actually what the answer would be. The bias is here is, you want to get into the calling yourself a polyglot. Oh, I know 4 languages. I know 5 or 6 languages. I think it's turning that around and saying, 4 languages really badly and 2 languages kind of okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you have to really introspect and look at yourself properly and go, no, that's what you're actually saying to yourself if you're doing that.
Yeah. Here's a general tip that I've learned over the years from when I was watching podcasts of polyglots, when I could bear it, when I could get through it. And the general stratagem, the tip that they say is you probably really only want to be learning one at a time, especially for the kind of new beginners, people like us who are relatively inexperienced. We don't have 7 hours a day to spend on this stuff. If you've only got max 2 hours a day, they recommend learning one language and just trying to maintain the others, and probably the 80-20 rule as well or something. So 80% of the time is learning the new one, 20% focusing on your old ones just to tick them over to make sure they're not absolutely degrading into nothingness.
This was, so it's kind of related to this. I don't know if you would have noted this or not. Do you reckon there's a limitation to how much languages you can truly learn to an A1 level?
For the average human, yes. For specialized people, no. They seem I definitely believe there's people out there who just have the brain for one, consuming vast amount of words. Here's an example that I learned recently of the Scrabble champion. I forget his name. I was telling you about Scrabble, right? I went down the YouTube. Okay, I've been going down this YouTube rabbit hole of Scrabble. It's pretty fascinating, to be honest. The game can become Scrabble history.
Right. Okay.
It can be very interesting. And there was this one guy, American guy, who won the French Scrabble tournament.
Oh.
And he did this by just learning over the course of a week or 3 weeks or something, the entire French dictionary, and then just went there and fucking monstered it. He didn't know how to speak the language. He didn't know,
he knew all the words.
But he knew all the words. And
wow.
So, and this is one case where it's, okay, well, obviously this guy has a ridiculous memory recall, and what, how would that help translate to learning the language? I'm not sure. I'm sure if he dedicated just some time to it, though, he could just now go, okay, I know the word for table, or maybe this is one of the ones where he doesn't even know what the translation is. He just knows sequence of letters equals yes, a thing, or sequence of letters
not a thing.
Not a thing. So
yeah, that's a good point.
In any case, fucking amazing that this dude just went and monstered a Scrabble tournament without knowing any of the words itself. So, or the language itself. So there are certainly people, and I'm pretty sure there's anecdotes from history of some crazy people who knew 45 different languages. And I think there's some modern day equivalents of people who
to something to that degree
who know some pretty deep. There's a great clip of this. I'm not sure where he's from originally. This is the problem with polyglots. You don't know where they're actually from. He's a tall European looking guy.
Okay.
Pretty good looking as well, because he's a TV presenter on the news. And it's this great clip of where it goes between 8 or 9 different news channels, and he's fluent in 9 different things, and he's just reporting the same news
all in different languages.
All in different languages. Really, really impressive. So yes, I would say there are people out there who can do it. For people like you and me, I think a lifetime of study where it's the secondary or third or 8th priority on our lists. If we got to a B2 level in 5 or 6 of them, I'd be pretty impressed with that.
I'd be like, wow, well done. Right, and that was going to be, so another practical aspect to this again is from a tip, or my thoughts around language is knowing what the outcome is that you actually want to achieve. So, I'll ask you the same question. What's that outcome that you're looking? So you said, okay, as a mere mortal, you can probably achieve 6 languages at B2 or better, let's just say. What does that look like to you then? What's like an achievable outcome to you that you actually want to functionally get to? So to give you an example, for me, I go, okay, if I had to be realistic, I've got 2 languages in the A. Awesome. I think I want to get to B's with the French. I don't necessarily want it to go to such a high degree that I'm working as part of French.
Yeah.
No, but I want to be a conversational with French. Fantastic. And then after that, there's a few other languages which I don't want to be conversational in. I want to be able to understand it to a certain degree, perhaps reading signs without needing any extra help, or understanding the meaning of a word to understand deeper the culture. And so if I really look at it at the core, now that I've looked at languages, I want to know the language, not so much to speak it. Like, I don't necessarily care for that. It's more the understanding of the word or the core sort of information that's trying to be obtained from something. Like, yeah, you've mentioned this, if you were to learn German and you go to read some of the quite good philosophical books in German, you might pick up something different.
Or even they've just got some really good authors. Hermann Hesse, he's not particularly a philosopher, but he writes some really nice
So,
books.
it's reading the original material that can be an extra level of whatever it is that's found. It's in the culture, it's in the language, kind of like embedded through. So at least to me, I go, this is going to sound lofty, right?
Okay.
It's going to sound lofty. So again, 2 languages in the A space. Probably French is going to be the only one that I really want it to be more of a conversational one. But then I want as many as possible in C. Like, I want so many in C. And I don't know what that particularly looks like.
Where's
and I
this
guess
coming from? This wasn't a one thing.
But this is,
a year or two ago.
this is not like a C. This is like C1.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is like real low level. But
Yeah,
I'm talking,
I getcha.
I'm talking 50 languages. I want like 50 languages that I could say hello to anybody, goodbye to anybody, to like very basic things, enough to be able to read things. I'm talking like everything: Chinese, Japanese, Russian, African, all of them. I want to be able to, and I think that there's part of me that's like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's kind of a cool thing, because to the very average person, they go like, oh crap, he knows 50 languages. Okay, that's not true. That's not the reality.
No.
But there is a certain connection with people you can make just by knowing a little bit of their language that makes 80% of the value. So that's not even 20% of the effort. That's 1% of the effort that gives you 50% of value with a person, even if you only know a very, very small amount of words. So I don't know if that's lofty or not. I think it's kind of achievable, because as I look into the future, I go like, French, okay, that's probably quite a few hours spent and practicing and keeping it going. For the rest of them, it might just be like a good couple of days of just learning a few words, critical words, kind of reinforcing them, learning, and then moving on. And then, I don't know, using like a monthly check-in to just summarize a few of those, just to kind of keep it in sharpen the sword of those C-level languages. So,
that is going to be interesting.
So again, and I won't develop it in this podcast in terms of how that goes, and it won't be in my annual goals, but I think that's going to be like the next decade's worth of effort. I reckon that'd be a fun thing. Like, if I had to give myself like a decade goal, I'd be like, by 40, it'd be awesome to get to that.
Okay.
So that's sort of level.
I'll talk more about the motivation aspect and why I think you'll really struggle with that goal in particular in the next section.
Oh wait, hit me with yours. What about you? What would be the?
Just general like life ones. I mean,
like, if we're practically talking again to help people, we're saying, hey, you should aim for as a tip, what is your outcome? Like, have it quite cemented in your mind as to what you want to do. If you had to summarize it, what it is that you want to do with languages.
For me, it's definitely not that, whatever that is. That's nowhere in my trajectory. I would say it's to be able to understand more about humans, and to do that. There's various different things about humanity and particular cultures which I find fascinating. Japanese culture, for one, is bizarre. It's a bizarre world. The experience I had there has been unlike any other, I feel, in terms of the way they react, their comment, their media, I guess, the things that they put out. are just so much different than a lot of the other things that I've seen. So I would want to know more about that. I don't particularly, there's some aspects of that which are, for example, that culture, I probably would care a little bit less about the actual conversation. Whereas in German, I actually really like the sound of the language. That's where I want to be able to use some of the words to be able to speak with Germans, and it's not as much about as their media and things. So like lifetime sort of things, English, Spanish, German, Japanese would probably be there.
At the A level?
Yeah, that's probably where I'd want to get to that B2 A1 level.
Okay, for all of them. Okay.
Yeah. I'm less interested in getting to a level where it's.
Do you think that's practical to maintain?
I'll talk more about that in the difficulty section. Yeah. So,
Yep,
that for me is just generally how I see it. I used to have something about Russian as well. Like it'd be cool to have Russian, but I don't actually know that much about their culture, to be honest. And that was back in the days when it was like the only reason I would go to Russia is because they're pretty girls there. And so
there's a few things about the Russian language which attract me around the sharpness, what I believe is the ability to, it seems like encapsulate a lot of emotion into a very short amount of words. But it has a lot of contextual meaning of like the years that it's been used as well, which would be very hard to kind of pick up at a surface level. Like just knowing like privet, to know that is like one thing, but to know some of the specifics around it, or a much more emotive word.
What does that mean? Like, I don't know what that means.
I think it's hello.
Okay.
Is it? Privet меня зовут Juan. Hello, my name is Juan.
Don't know. That sounded French.
No, well, and I'm sure that I pronounced it wrong because I actually said it to a Russian guy once at the gym, and they were like, "What?" And then I got them to say it, and it was very different pronunciation. So I was like,
sure.
"There you go." So pronunciation also is the biggest thing, which we can talk about in the issues.
Yeah,
so
sounds good.
Should we talk about the boostergrams? How do you say boostergrams in Spanish? It's going to be new here.
Mensaje de boost.
Un mensaje de boost.
Yeah, there we go. Un mensaje. Yep.
Un message. Okay, so we got boostergrams come. Again, there's the ability for people to send through
a message with some payment attached to that, which helps to keep the support going for this podcast, and is also great content for us because it helps us know direction-wise what you think of this. Really enjoyable to get your comments, and we love hearing from you and knowing that people are actually listening as well. That's one of the main aspects of it. So the numbers higher is better, of course, and we really do appreciate that. But just sending some in is beautiful for us to know, okay, there's someone out there listening who actually cares and gets some value from this.
Exactly. So let's start with the dependable Dave Jones. The weekly boost for the Mere Mortal Nation, 12,112 cents using Cron.
So good. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much, Dave. As always, he sent through that weekly boost for the Mere Mortal Nation. So, yeah, Dave. Much appreciated, good sir. The other one comes from Cardboard Giraffe, and that's 111 sats using Fountain. They say, I am driving through patchy reception and the audio just stopped at the moment. You said his forehead touched his chest. I had to sit with that image in my mind for like 4.5 minutes. So thanks for that.
Thanks for that. I didn't even need to hear that.
Yes.
And I didn't have to sit with it.
I sent you the video and you didn't want to watch it.
No, I didn't watch it.
So you should have watched it. Imagine, folks, forehead to the chest.
I chose not to.
Chose not to. We got another one here from Peter, 7,777 sats and using Fountain. And he says, sounds like a wonderful trip. I'm selfishly excited to hear about your experiences on the podcast. I predict the highlight will be meeting the pod sage himself, Dave Jones. So it sounds like Peter's more excited for you than I was for your definitely. Upcoming trip. So
I responded to him. I've got my little world map here in front of me, my dodgy globe, which the reason I bought this was to spruce up my room. And that was because I had literally nothing in my room. So when I look at my map here of America, it doesn't actually have it on here, but I know for a fact that Alabama is right underneath Nashville, underneath Tennessee. So maybe I can go there a bit early and meet Mr. Dave Jones and spend some more time with him.
Why not? Stay at his house?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm less enthused about staying at people's houses as I thought I would be. the thought of the actual realities and impacts, because I'm so weird, man. Like, I don't eat breakfast.
Correct.
I go to bed at later times. I don't wake up at these things. I think it'd be nice to maybe stay one night. But
Would it be weirder to have you at a home, or would it be weirder to have me at someone's house?
because
I'd be getting up at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
I'd be going for like a
you'd feel
run.
just as bad, yeah.
Like I'd just come like, there'd be like, not like David Goggins level, but it's like I'd be annoying.
Yeah,
I'd definitely be annoying. I'd
Me
be
too.
waking people up.
Yeah, me too.
We're not good house cats, folks.
Yeah.
Not good house cats. And another one from Peter as well, Row of Ducks, 2,222 sats using Fountain. He says, also, intellectual property laws are bullshit. Information is not property, and copyright hurts content creators. V for V is the only way forward. My views are informed by Stephen Kinselter.
Yeah, I actually listened to it was for the Mises Institute. It was a lecture, a presentation he did, a 30-minute one this morning on that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, pretty much it very similar to the thoughts and things expressed in the book Common Air by Lewis Hyde that I reviewed, which is essentially, but this guy was definitely a bit more hardcore, and I think Peter likes the hardcore people.
Peter loves the hardcore people for sure.
Who go in deep, have really, they are really strong, and this guy was basically going like, a lot of some really interesting things came from that as well. Some really funny one. I wrote one down here because it was actually really interesting. So the paradox of piracy, and so in the original IP laws as they were written in the kind of 1500s, it was usually a monarch granting a monopoly to a single individual. So it was very much a incestuous, hierarchical, behind the back sort of shady deal things. That was what the original IP laws were. And one of the first ones was for a guy called Francis Drake, also known as Sir Francis Drake, who was a kind of legal pirate. So the English crown allowed him to go and fuck up the Spanish ships, the Belgian ships, the Dutch ships, and he could just...
They deserved it.
Yeah. He could just, take all their loot, bring it back to England, just had to give a bit of it back. So one of the first IP laws was actually for a pirate. Switch now to the 2010s or 2000s, and it's the people who are flaunting the IP laws are the ones being called pirates for sharing information and breaking these IP laws. So it's just that real funny where it was like the original IP law was for a pirate, breaking it is now
called piracy.
Called piracy. And so
Interesting.
that was a real nice
cool.
parallel.
I
I really like that. I thought that was really cool. So yeah, that guy I'm going to listen to a couple more things.
Stephen Kinsella.
Yeah.
It's the name double L there.
The only thing I found on him is a couple of YouTube things, and one was on the What Is Money show by Robert Breedlove. So
cool.
It'll be Bitcoin related as well.
Beautiful. All right, Peter. Thanks for those two there.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate that, Peter.
And then the last one we got here is from Macintosh. This was yesterday. 2,121 sats and using Fountain. He says, Headbangers Ball started in April of 1987.
I was not born.
I would have been at the end of my junior year of high school. I don't remember the original host, but I definitely remember Adam and his head of hair. It was the only place I could ever see Striper video anyways. It's extremely cool that Adam is leading by example in promoting V for V through music, go podcasting, music casting, Macintosh.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. So that's Macintosh from the Generation Bitcoin podcast. Yeah, this is one of the shame things about our age one. I feel... if we'd just been born 5-10 years earlier, we could have seen the kind of internet from its very get-go. And I feel like there was a couple of things that I missed out upon in terms of the open source movement, just some historical context, which I think if I was 5-10 years older, it would have been really nice to live through.
Nah, I disagree.
Yeah?
I disagree. I think that we were right on time with a lot of things.
Okay.
With a lot of other things. I think you can make a good statement for... Yes, but you also would have been right at the inception of things like Facebook and Instagram. And we were the age that could have actually taken them right at the very beginning. Whereas maybe 5 years older, you wouldn't have, because that would, you weren't part of the schooling or the college spacing. And so you weren't going to be a part of that.
I don't know. Was I late? 2009. That's when I started. That's when I created one.
Facebook?
Right at the end.
I think Facebook started 2004, 2005, something like
been
that.
around
So
a
I've been
long
around
time
for a little
already.
while. Yeah. So not so much that we get to it late, but like I guess our age group would have been more aligned to getting it early than someone there. But I get your point.
This is more a personal thing though. I never had a Bebo account, for example.
But another example though, we were probably too young for when Bitcoin was around. like the inception of Bitcoin. Even if we were like
True.
hardcore, like, yeah, let's get it. I probably had my
Yeah.
ball sacks to squish together to get money out of it, right? I was just going to be like a kid on this corner trying to get some money. So I wasn't going to be doing anything.
Two 17-year-olds are not caring. I was actually just saying to my brother last night, because my dad and I were talking about the IMF, and this is one thing we're pretty much agreed on, which is the
How
IMF.
good the IMF is.
The International
Monetary
Monetary
Fund. How good they are for the world.
Yes, correct. Which is basically they seem to screw over a lot of countries with their.
I mean, not at the if you're USA.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good for the USA.
It's the kind of like loan sharking of the geopolitic scene.
Yes.
And the more I learn about them, the more I'm not a fan of them. And 17-year-old Kyron was not going to care about that. And my brother, he's 25, and I was saying to him, this conversation we're having right now between me and Dad, you will maybe care about this in 5 years' time, if I had to guess, just based on my own trajectory.
Yep. Yeah, it's a reality. That's how it works.
You start caring about money and politics and that
Just
sort
you're
of
right.
shit.
10 more years, Karen's going to be deep into politics.
God
It's
damn,
in your blood. All right, back to languages.
Blow my brains up.
Let's talk about operational level. So let's talk maintaining issues with maintaining languages.
Okay. So first of all, just my general stratagems that I've taken over. I won't go too deeply into these. So the basic stuff that I've heard is broadly, you want to cover the 4 areas. So this is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And you want to, if you want to get to those higher levels, you need to work on all of them. And a lot of the tests like the IELTS or TOEFL, they break it into those 4 categories as well.
Yep.
You want to generally move away from the courses. So this is the Duolingo type things. There's plenty of, that's the most well-known. I used to know a bunch of the other ones. Babbel, yeah. I used to know them better. But figure out your own learning style, because they are very broad. And I would say language learning is one of those ones where I think there's a lot of different ways you can get into learning it. I know people who really like doing it through music and learning it to like the beat of a song, who love listening to songs. There's people who do it through movies, it's one of those ones where I go, it's so broad that you probably want to spend the time to figure out how you learn, and that will pay dividends really, really quickly. Spaced repetition is better than big chunks. So if you've got 5 hours a week, it's better to do it an hour a day rather than 5 hours on one day. That's just general, well-known, related to stuff happening in your brain when you sleep and things like that. And so just the difficulty wise. So in particular, a lot of it is related to motivation. And I think, so this is similar to the advice I got on learning a programming language. You want to have something that'll keep you motivated and keep you going, and a kind of task or a goal to aim for. And the problem when you're learning it, especially not in another country, is in the country that speaks it, is I think you lose track of that goal, that focus, that motivation, and it's a lot harder to maintain. And I think you actually have to force it. It has to be a forced thing, especially conversing. So obviously for beginners, you need to force it because it's so uncomfortable, especially your first language. You're going to say things wrong. You're going to forget words. You're going to be standing in front of someone trying to communicate, and it's just blank, and you're just going, it's an intensely uncomfortable experience. When it gets to learning how to converse though, and getting to those kind of higher levels of A1 and B2, and especially the conversing, I've noticed, I've been to in real life events, I've had a good friend who speaks Spanish and tried doing it with you, aka Juan, randoms, casual acquaintances, online, meetup things, dates, none of them have stuck for me. And it's one of those ones where I go, I have to, and I've tried to make it, incorporated into my life where I can use my Spanish, and I won't have to try. It'll be with another activity. And I'm coming to the conclusion it has to be forced. So you either have to, so you either have to do it by going to the country where they speak it, so you're forced to do it, or you pay for it, through a teacher or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or you make the conscious effort that I'm going to spend 3 or 4 hours a week, and it's going to be in a particular thing with the only outcome of this is I'm going to learn the language better.
Okay.
And it's not like you can get it as a side effect of just having a friend who you really enjoy hanging out with, and then, you know, just by chance they also speak it. I'm coming to that conclusion. Yeah.
Okay. For you, do you ever go around the world at the moment, like when you're walking around doing workouts, whatever? Do you ever look at something and think about it first in the German word or in the Spanish word? Like, do you see it, like, would you see a tree and think like tree or árbol or whatever the hell it is in German?
When I was really trying to maintain my Spanish, I used to try and do a thing where I would only count my repetitions in Spanish. And whenever I was in rest sets or resting between sets, I would try to only think in Spanish.
Okay.
My observations, once again, I could maintain that for a little bit, but over time, and I'm talking months to year time period for this, because I've been trying to learn Spanish since 2015. It was probably when I was really first trying to get into it. Maybe, no, even before that, I did it in my break before I got work. So 2013, 2014, that December, January was when I first tried learning Spanish. I've done a whole lot of things over that time period, and it's unless it's like an intense focus, I've never been able to get those secondary ones, which I would count that as a kind of secondary type of deal.
Yeah, okay. I guess what I was saying to you was, I was thinking in my mind, so at the moment they're more direct thoughts of, like, say, open and close. For some reason, I now know that, like, better, and maybe because I'm just practicing it at the moment more in French than I do in Spanish. Like, it takes me longer to think what the word is for open and close in Spanish than it is in French.
Okay.
Maybe it's because I'm practicing it more, so that's a thing. But there has been instances now where I'll just be driving and I'll see a dog and I won't think dog or perro. I'll think,
are you trying to do that?
No. Like, this would just be, I'll just see it. Like, I saw a dog this morning that I was like, oh, where's the dog? But I kept thinking, not dog. I was like, oh, chien. And I just kept being like that. And I kind of noticed it. I was like, oh, I was thinking it much more in the French word than I was Spanish, let alone English. Although by default, in my mind, I do all numbers in Spanish 98% of the time, especially if I want to do it quickly.
Yeah.
It's Spanish only.
I would say that is a side effect of you studying more.
Right, okay.
Rather,
So it's a side effect of the direct work of...
Yes, correct. Yeah, I had the same thing. When I was having Spanish streams, that was when I was working my fucking ass off, doing tons of grammar per day, and I was in Mexico using it and really making sure that I was... every chance I got to use Spanish, I would use it. And even if people were trying to speak to me in English, I would just respond in Spanish. So those type of ones, that kind of passive learning, I feel is a wishy-washy. It's a dream. It's the mythical thing. You know, osmosis through your sleep. You just listen to the things and it'll work, or you just switch your phone into. I've done it. You know, I've fucking done all of the things. I've switched my phone into another language. In the hopes that, oh yeah, this will help me because I'll have to, it'll, you know,
force you to,
most of the time I've found it's not a passive thing, and it's work, and it was work to look at my phone and try and go into the settings and figure out, fuck, like I got to do this thing, and that took away from the passive aspect of it, which made me go, well, if I'm doing work, this is
not passive.
This is not the best way of doing it. The best way, I know there's better ways of doing it. I should save my energy for that because this is just pissing me off.
Yep. No, fair cool. Yep. Fair cool.
So when it comes to, well, before I get into some of the other difficulties, what's been your biggest struggle at the moment? So this is the first time you're learning a new language as an adult, French, and you've been doing it for about a year now. What have you struggled with the most?
There was this thing I was reading today in preparation for this, and it was the difference between expressing in your thoughts versus expressing in a communicative way. So it's in language generally, it will be a tendency that you can express into your mind much easier than you can express upon a communication style. That boundary That's what I think has been the hardest for me, because I can, I would say I'm fairly confident now that I could, I said I want to get a book that I want to read in French. Honestly, I reckon I could probably read that book without even looking up any words right now.
Okay.
Yes, it's going to be words that I won't understand. Absolutely. But I feel fairly confident enough, plus the fact that it does connect in some ways to like the root of Latin and has some connections to Spanish, that I could probably go and read the entire thing and understand the entire context. Sure, I probably need to go and do some detailed checking of specific words to get everything right.
Yeah,
but generally,
you'd maybe need to know how there's the rose is in a glass bowl, for example.
Exactly. That might be like a specific thing. Yeah. But generally in a sentence, I'd be able to kind of make do with what it is that's there. I've found this more so as well in Duolingo. There's the stories, and sometimes the stories bring words that you haven't even learned yet. And that doesn't even challenge me at all. It's like, okay, cool. I can understand the context. I know what's happening. I really don't even need to look up what these are. I kind of already infer what they are. Mm-hmm. I guess it's the expressing it into my mind, because it is very internal. I can, work that through in my own mind in comparisons with other things. There's no speed of reactivity, because the speed of reactivity in your mind is very quick. The hard thing for me is then moving that into a speed of communication, or expressing it into a communicative sense. That's where it becomes much more of a challenge, because it isn't one inferring in a very acute way. It's not a preset amount of things that you're saying and then you tick it off. It's against something which is chaotic. It's something that you don't know what the next step's going to be, and it could go in a completely different turn. And you're having to both challenge having a conversation with a language that you're not adept into. So, yes, I could have a very basic conversation, but I'm at the level that if it went beyond a particular point, I'm stuck. Where in Spanish, I have enough of the foundation that I'll easily get to points where I won't know the words, just don't know what they are. But I can keep on going with the conversation in different manners. Example this morning, did lots of French training early this morning. Felt kind of okay. I felt in some of the conversational aspects, I was still a little bit like, how do you say this? Especially when I wasn't seeing what it was. But then at the gym, I was speaking in Spanish with someone there who was Colombian, and the conversation got to a point where we were saying some words which I didn't even know how to say, like bench press, right? Like things like bench press. I don't really know how to say bench press in Spanish.
A lot of them, they don't have a particular word.
Right.
They just say
he was using a word for it.
Okay.
And so when he said it, I was like, oh, is that what it is? But I would, you do that intermingling of using a little bit of English, or I'd find a way of getting around using bench press and being like, whatever. Yeah. So I can get around it, but I couldn't get around it with French. Obviously, I just don't know the language. I don't have the manipulation of the language enough. And so that's the hardest challenge for me. It's moving from expressing of mind to expressing of thought. That's the most difficult piece.
Yeah. Okay. For me, what I've noticed was it was conforming what I knew, trying to conform what I knew already and actually relaxing my grip. So this is where the classic, you know literally what you want to say, and you try and translate literally in your mind, and then you try and impose some extra grammar on top of that. So, if I wanted to say, I saw the red car, you don't say it in that order in Spanish. You say, like, I saw the car red. Mm-hmm. And you can go, okay, well, that's all right. I know this. And then so you change that. But what would happen is you learn these rules of, okay, well, the in this case, the adjective always comes after the noun. But then there's some cases where it doesn't. Mm-hmm. and you start to hear them and you learn more, and you're like, I just learned this rule, and then here's a thing that's contradicting it. What the fuck? And typically the teacher or the online resource will say, this is just one of those ones you just have to remember. You just have to remember anything which has an A at the start of it, and in Spanish, and is a word which should be like la agua. You can't say that. You say el agua, but then it converts and becomes las aguas when it's a plural. So it's like, what the fuck, man? And so this is one of the ones where I had to, it's kind of the paradox thing, which has been the theme of my recent, probably like last 5-10 years, which is, okay, you just have to lean into the paradox, lean into the discomfort of this thing doesn't particularly make sense, but you just have to accept it now. And even though German is arguably a harder language, most people would say that is for an English speaker to learn. It's kind of the immediate level, and the hardest ones would be Japanese and Russian and things like that. Probably some African languages as well. German has been a breeze compared to my first learning of Spanish, because I've already gotten over that. And now it's just that accepting of, okay, this is going to suck. There's going to be some things you don't understand. Just roll with the punches here.
Yeah.
Don't try and fight it. Don't try and say that you're right. You know, it doesn't work.
Well, and this kind of goes to another practical point, or it can be the danger on the opposite side, is treating learning a language, and if I'm going to go forward in learning other languages, as if you're ticking the box to a particular piece and then that's it. Like, you've unlocked it. It's completed. It's like, no, it's not that, not even close to that. And what I mean by that is, you know, you might learn all the colors and you go, well, that's it. I've learned all the colors. That's it, done. But there's learning about the colors. There's knowing, as you say, there's knowing about the colors and how you would state a color. Sometimes, you know, like in English, orange, right? It means a fruit, and the color as well. There's similarities in other languages as well, where, you know, one could be this in this particular way, or you could say it in this other. There might be a cultural context. I think going in with a mindset of, cool, I've learned the numbers, I've learned the rule that it appears to be how it's working. So, you know, in French, I'm just kind of going into it at the moment. How you say like 80, I think it's like you say 2040s or something like that. You know, like
really?
stupidity shit. And then, like 90 is 20. It's like, you know, 2040s 10s 9.
Really?
That's to say,
that's gross, man.
It's gross, dude. I was like,
that's not nice.
yeah, which is, so it's easy to set. It's easy for me to mentally go through it, but it's difficult to then extrapolate into a conversation, because that's not how you generally do it.
Yeah.
So, but even then, I've learned some of the rules of it, and I go, okay, cool, I get it. I see what they're doing, but that could change as it goes into the hundreds, or it could change as it goes to the thousands, or it could change if you're saying it in another manner. Maybe there's like a shortened version. I think there's a danger in just sticking, figuring out a rule and going, okay, cool, that's must be the rule, and I've learned it. I don't have to think about it again. Because yes, you'll look like a fool when you try and articulate something and be like, no, what the hell? That's not how we do it at all.
Yeah, that kind of relates to my last point, which was comments on the degradation. So I've now, you know, if you were listening to the Mere Mortals long enough, you saw me in my kind of peak phase of learning Spanish, where I'd come back to Australia. I'd learnt a lot whilst I was there, but then I took it up to the next level, and where I was reading Cien Años de Soledad, it's not as complicated as some of these other ones because of Mario Vargas Llosa, for example. His slang and just the way he writes is so much harder. So Cien Años de Soledad, 100 Years of Solitude, even though it has a lot of really weird words in it. Alcaravan, he always uses that. Diaphano, like diaphanous. I don't even use that in English, but that is a common one that he uses. And there was all sorts of one. I've got my list around here somewhere. That was kind of peak phase, and I was really studying hard. You saw me doing reseñas in Spanglish. I was doing a full podcast on this. I must have reached a peak phase probably a little bit after I stopped doing the reseñas. So what would that be? Probably mid-2021, if I had to guess, something like that. And that was when probably my Spanish was peaking. And now I'm on, 2 years later, I'm on the slow decline, the degradation. I thought it would be worse than it has been.
Okay.
The general thing that I've heard over just years and years is anyone who says, oh, you stop using it, you lose it. And the way they said it made me think,
fuck, I lose it all.
I'm going to lose 50% in the next year if I only do 1 hour every month or less than an hour every month. And I thought, I'm so screwed. This is going to be so annoying because I've worked my ass off to get to this level. The degradation has been less than I thought, but I think it's also, I'm guilty of also saying this to people. That, yeah, you're going to lose it, if you don't use it. And I think it's just a way of, I don't know, protecting yourself or because there are certain things that just go away, but it's not as dramatic as. So this is kind of not even a difficulty. There's a bright point for me.
Yeah,
which
okay.
is it's not as bad as I thought.
Do you think you could do reseñas now?
I could. It would not be as good. It would probably be close to when I first started doing them. If I had to say, it would be around that same level. And if you looked at the first episode versus the last ones, the first one is really bad. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. Here's an example. Did you see the thumbnail for today?
Yes, I did see it.
Yeah. So did you actually know all of the words on there? Do you know what escaparate means?
Escaparate.
Yeah.
Nah.
So this was one where I as I was creating the thumbnail, I was looking at that and I went, escaparate. It didn't come to mind immediately. Shit. I don't know what that means. Then I dwelled on it for 20 seconds and just suddenly into my mind popped shop window. Escaparate.
Escaparate.
And so it means, a shop window essentially as you're walking by a store. The window that is on the front, that glass screen, that is what it means.
Okay.
And so I went, okay, it's still in there. There's still some stuff in there. I haven't used that word. I've probably used that word 10 times in everyday speech, if that.
Yep.
And it was still just in there. So it's not as bad as I thought, but difficulty wise, that's probably another thing you just have to accept. If you're not going to use it, it will get worse over time.
Of course. Absolutely.
And this was getting to what I thought you were going to struggle with the most, which is of all of these 50 languages that you're trying to maybe learn in the next 10 years.
At least 50.
At least 50.
At least.
How much of this are you actually going to get a chance to use? Because if there's...
Well, I'll answer it right now. The way that I would want to use them, I'd probably be using them every day.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would be, I would find it fun to communicate with, I'm weird folks. I would find it fun to communicate with random people. Sometimes just saying it in different, like saying hello in different languages, just for fun.
Okay.
Especially, I work in a lot of areas now which are fairly multicultural.
Yeah.
It'd be fun just to be, I'll give you an example. New coffee place opened up next door. There was a Japanese girl who was, serving in the coffee. I'd love to be able to be like, konnichiwa, order my coffee in Japanese. Mm-hmm. Nice and easy. Say goodbye, say thank you. I would do that non-stop, dude. I would do that non-stop. So I guess in that manner.
Getting back to the thumbnail again, which I wrote, more words, more problems. Mm-hmm. Do you think you have the straight up bandwidth to remember a lot? Are you good at, I know you're good at remembering songs, for example. Are you good at recall for words? Have you ever done any of the Anki, those card ones where it basically space repetition? It's an app where you put in things that you're struggling with, and it will just bring them up in this certain order over time. It's got an algorithm behind it for that
I don't know.
optimal space repetition.
There's some things that I'm good at with word repetition. Not any better than any normal mere mortal, to be honest, though. But I am good with some types of like actions, like when I have to do an action or follow up on a particular thing. When people have like a to-do list.
Yeah.
I will religiously, for work perspective, used to have a big to-do list and like a list of notes and things that I'd have to do and build up like my own online to-do list. And I still have them for relatively quite a bit of things. But I started to just be like, let's just see what happens if I just don't do any, like don't write anything down on to-do list or anything like that. I tend to remember it all anyways. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure what it would be like. Although I can tell you right now, I think of most of the language, I'd have to go back and check this. But there's only like snippets of language. But I can still remember how to say, how are you in Afrikaans and what it's like, at least written how to say, hello, my name is Juan in like heaps of languages. Yeah. So I don't know.
Because I think that undertaking is going to be a lot more similar to what the Scrabble guy did and learning those words in French and just memorizing the straight up order and sequences, because you're going to miss out on so many of the gains of learning a language, which is when you can build on top of things.
Yes.
For example, I remember fish, to fish, the verb in Spanish, because I saw it's called pescar. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing a thing of a guy and it looked like he was peeing on a car from a bridge. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's exactly like a fisherman would do. And then from there I can remember, okay, car, what's a car? Well, carro, that's kind of similar. How do I remember the word rojo? Well, there's a red car, carro rojo. And then it's kind of, you bank upon these sort of things. Similar with
Damn, see, I don't do that at all.
so and I think a lot of people tend to do this from what I gather. Pete Smithson, when he was saying with the English, so this is from the Aussie English, and he helps people learn Australian English. You notice with his speech, he'll say these words and then the variation of it. I went to the beach and it was beautiful. It was an awesome day at the beach. There was, it was fantastic. It was majestic. And he'll use adjectives because you can build upon things like that.
Right.
I do the same with when I think of a morada, like purple in Spanish. I also morada. I also remember, okay, brown is similar to that, marrón, and it's kind of it's that linkages between words that I think a lot of people
maybe
a lot of benefit from.
Okay,
and
that's interesting.
You won't be able to do that because you're going to learn unless you can do it across the languages. But that's when I just go, man, you're just going to get confused, which gets me to my last difficulty.
Okay.
You got to really be careful about not mixing them when you're trying to learn them. And I've been guilty of this myself, and it irks me to fucking shit's end where I'll be learning German and then my mind will gravitate and I will have a conversation with in my head in Spanish about a German word or about that German sentence.
Yeah.
And it's so unhelpful because you're just
mixing up.
You're just getting switched into these different realms, and it's and I notice after that I'll then trying to say a sentence which is a mixture of German and English, or German and Spanish, and it's so counterproductive. It makes my German worse when I do that.
Yeah.
And I'll be curious as to how you're learning these things, because I feel you might try and do word association across languages, and I'm not sure that'll be helpful.
Well, then that's what I was about to say. I guess that's exactly how I do it. Yeah, because I was going to say the way when I'm like doing French at the moment, like, say chat, right, in French. When I see the word, I picture the three different ways you can, like in the three languages that I know, and I picture the image. Like I'll be like cat, I'll be like cat, chat, gato. And it's like kind of just combined into the image, I guess.
Which isn't too bad because, as I said, rojo is similar to red. It starts with R, and carro and car. So it's not the worst thing to do. That's how I remembered nebloso and neblig, which is fog in German. That association is there in my mind. So it's not the worst thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking when it's the kind of same words or the same sentence structure, I'm just not sure how helpful that will be.
Yeah,
but,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I can definitely tell you right now when I go through like a French sentence or something, the particular call outs of the words which is making part of the sentence, I definitely see that as like the image in my mind and the different ways it's pronounced in the different language, like the different spelling or pronunciation of different languages to group it together.
Are you planning on doing any research as to what the best way of doing this would be, or are you just going to wing it and try and do it yourself?
No, the ones that I really want to get like fairly good at, which would be essentially French.
Are you going to watch podcasts about polyglots speaking about how to learn?
No, definitely not. I think the way that I would probably progress is going to be French. As I said, probably move into the reading a book, like much more of that understanding, and then moving into trying to speak it in some form or another. It's not a goal, but it's probably what I'll be moving towards in an attempt to go to places where I can speak French. And the other ones, it'll be very pure, simple things that I could just keep up on a day-to-day basis. That might be Duolingo. In the past, that's been, hey, I think I did this for a month. I was like, okay, for this month, every week on a Monday, I'm just going to learn how to say a particular sentence in 15 different languages. Mm-hmm. And I'll just go through them and just remember it basically ad verbatim. And then that's it. I'll just know it forever type of deal. And then I'll do the same another week and another week. And then by the end of the month, I know 4 sentences, but I know them across the different languages.
So you did this a while ago for 12, I believe. It was one of your monthly goals, probably a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah. So Afrikaans and stuff like that.
How's that going? How many of those could you pop out, do you think?
Not many. Like in varying weirdness, who Han did this is how are you in Afrikaans. Okay. Like I remember that a lot. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why. So, and then there's some in like Privet Menya Savut, although I don't know if that's how you pronounce it right for Russian. There's little things like that, and I'm like, oh yeah. I don't know. But this is the thing. When it comes into the operational, obviously I did this years ago.
Yeah.
Not much has been retained. How much would I have to be doing on a continual basis to refresh it? And that's where I went. And this would be good to get from the Immortalites. If you do something like this, or you have a lot of languages,
this one. Come on.
I would love to see if there's like a monthly recall or a summarization, or be like, no, you cannot do this. Like, be like, no, this is not possible. To kind of give an idea. And by the way, so people are aware, because I was saying this for the numbers in French because it's interesting. So I'll let Google actually pronounce this. If it bloody turned on loud.
Come on.
99.
Do it again.
99.
Sounds
right?
like get on these nerves or something.
And unfortunately, so what that is cut, 4, 20, 20, this, 10, 9, 9. And so it's 4, 20, 10, 9.
Damn,
so it's 4 times 20 plus 10 plus 9.
That's really
99.
ugly. Why do they do that?
And they do this for they do for like a lot of the words going up into like above the 78, you actually have to say 60, 10, 8. Right? And I was like, what the hell? But if you go to, 54, what would you think it'd be? Then it goes into 54.
Okay, nice.
So it goes, I think 60 still has its own like particular spelling.
Yeah.
And then 70, fuck yeah. You're going 60 plus 10. 80, you're not doing 60 plus 20. You're doing 4 times 20 plus 10. And I was like, what?
Yeah,
what are you doing to me?
That's I was complaining about German, and it's what happens in German is very similar to English. 1 to 20 is its own things, and then from 20 onwards it's zwanzig and something else. But they'll put the I can't remember what year the word for the number that comes second. Is it like the cardinal or ordinal number, whatever it is? So that instead of saying 21, they'll say 21, like 1 and 20.
Yeah.
And so they do that little switch over. It's not that bad, because when you get into the hundreds, it's then 100, 21. So it's like 100, 1 and 20. And then to the thousands as well, it's the 1,000 stays in front. So it's thankfully not converting everything over.
Thank God, yeah.
But that is disgusting.
Well, this one, say, if you were trying to say 1,999 or like 1999,
Yeah.
you say mille, which is the 1,000.
1,000, yeah.
Neuf for
900.
the 900.
Yeah.
Cent for 100.
Okay, yeah.
Then you say quatre for 4, 20 for 20, this for 10, and then neuf for 9.
Yeah. How big is that?
Yeah. So it's feral. It's kind of feral when you get to those high numbers. I was a little bit like, oh man,
Damn.
what? This is annoying. So anyways, that's French words for you folks. French words for you.
Finishing off my summary here. So I'd recommend it, actually, learning a third or fourth language if you're
50
if you're getting into that. With the caveat, you are not likely to reach your goal quickly. I think language learning is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, in terms of all the shit that I've tried over the years, the body manipulations, diets, the different ways of thinking, all of this sort of shit. Staying consistent with a language has been the hardest. That's the one where I've gone in and out the most. I learned some Spanish in 2013, 2014, didn't touch it for a couple of years, got back into it 2017, got out of it, and then got back into it just before I was traveling, learned whilst traveling, came here, kept it up, have dropped it off again. It was some of my goals these last couple of years to keep up some Spanish, and it's just, I've definitely moved forward, but it's one of those ones where I think expectation-wise, you have to be really looking at years and years and be comfortable being shit for a really long time and feeling crap because your Spanish is crap, or your German is crap, or your Japanese is crap.
Yeah.
And then, funnily enough, one of the last just little points here was what I'm thinking about is the limitations with the large language models, and there's this kind of idea of the universal translator in your ear. So you go to Brazil and it's like, I don't want to learn Portuguese. I'm just going to have something that they'll speak into it. It'll translate that and translate it into English in my earpiece. then I can say it and it'll translate it into Portuguese or something like that. I'm not sure that's actually going to work that well, even with all the success we've had with AI and things like this in the last year. I'm thinking that languages, when you're learning them, you're learning a new way of thinking. Like Juan was just saying, that way of thinking, of saying numbers, is incredibly different. And that's just a simple number, let alone the weird grammar aspects of the verb goes at the end, or the subject verb order changes to, instead of noun verb adjective, it changes to this. And this is why I think learning a language is so hard. It is just straight up learning a new way of thinking. And I've said this for ages. When I speak in Spanish, I feel like I'm a different person. And German, I'm starting to see the same sort of thing. And yeah, until we get to the literally impulse things in the brain, neurochips, being able to connect that to a digital computer, I don't think any of the external language models are really going to have huge amounts of success. That's my little prediction. Million sat bet on the... No,
Jesus.
I'm joking.
Okay, so I feel like you've butchered what large language models actually are with that interpretation. But I get what you're saying. Yes, and I agree. It's like there's some underlying basis that's missing in amongst the what looks at face value to be less complex, actually more complex by the virtue of just the conversation or what you're trying to interact with, for sure. I think for me, you kind of touched on it already about the time, but it's like, I think with languages and learning languages, sure, I say, hey, I want to learn like 50 languages and do this. But the reality is that...
The arrogance.
In the short term, your goals for it are going to suck and you're going to be shit at it.
Yeah.
You're only going to see the benefit, like the improvements over a very long term.
Yeah, true. That's another one. It's a real delayed onset for the gratification.
Yes.
You have to spend in a ridiculous amount of time, and then when you're not expecting it is when you get a payoff, when you get to chat with someone and have a conversation, or you learn something which you didn't think you knew.
Yeah.
And it's a real big gap between you putting in the 20 hours of effort versus it can be 20 days later when that pays off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think go into learning languages not for the dress up, not for the, ooh, look at me, I can go and do this, because for many reasons. One, don't be an asshole. Two, if you're trying to do it that way, you're going to get shown up absolutely at some point, and you're going to be ridiculed because of it. If you're going down that path, because you'll go and get presented as being like an idiot, right? In terms of you will also get a negative feeling towards being wrong. Whereas if you're approaching it from a more curiosity improvement, is going to be a better thing, right? You kind of want to go and talk and be shit because you're going to learn from it. If you're doing it to show off, you're probably not going to be doing that. You might be backing away. You might get whatever. So it doesn't help the cause.
I met this girl in Mexico in a hostel who told me she was fluent in Spanish, and I started chatting with her, and she was at a C2 level. She could barely understand me, and I was speaking really... my pronunciation of Spanish is nice. I wasn't using slang. I wasn't using any bad stuff. Real simple. And just my impression of her after she said that, and versus me learning the reality, was just like, fuck this girl. How deluded are you? What reality do you live in where you can claim fluency with your level? It's one of those ones where it's if you're claiming it as well, just
be prepared to back it up.
You got to back it up. Otherwise, you leave that. I mean, I still remember her. I've met a lot of people whilst traveling who I don't remember anymore, but I remember her just for that one instance.
There you go. So for you, keep learning Spanish. Cool. All right, folks. That's going to become the end of the conversation here around languages. Once again, if you want to participate, there's many ways you can do so. One, you can be tuning in live to the conversation we do at 7 p.m. Here in a studio, or at home, depends on the day. But you can always join us live and ask some questions. You can send through some treasure in the way of boost scrims with some sort of Satoshis attached. We're talking about, that support model. That's going to be the best way for you to help us out.
Yeah, I didn't mention it, but there is a PayPal as well. I checked it just before. No one had sent anything in. please send one in just so we can see if it actually works.
If it's working.
And if it doesn't work, then let me know so I know that it's not working.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure it does. But
there's like hundreds of thousands of dollars going in there just dropping away.
No!
But look, but if you're going to go one of the other two parts, send through a boostergram, send through some Satoshis, try out that method. You can go to Fountain FM. You can go to the new podcasting apps, newpodcastapps.com to see the other participating apps that you can go and use. Again, you listen to Karen, he'll be like, go and use Fountain, go and use a few other different ones. I'm still in the model of Spotify. Yeah. That just makes it easy. Again, wherever you're sending us or checking us out, it does help us out. Share it with a friend as well. That also helps us out.
Yeah. If you want to know more about that in particular, I just did an episode on the Value for Value podcast about streaming sats, where I went over the whole, basically from start to finish, how you can do it, which apps you can, why you would want to do it, why it's very helpful. And
there you go. There's a good place for you to go.
I'm going to be doing another episode on Boostergram, so we'll be able to link to that from next week onwards, as well as in terms of if you want to know what it is, here's the place to go. Bam. And this is why it's important.
Good. Yeah. And finally, before we go, is there any thoughts on topics for the next episode as well?
I did have one which has kind of been on my mind. It's not as linked. Yeah, it kind of is. So I wanted to talk about stress and burning out.
And burning out.
I think language learning can actually be a bit stressful. So this wasn't particularly tied to this, but I can tie it if you want.
Doesn't have to be. No.
But yeah, just the concept of stress, how much you want to have it in your life, and the utility of using it or not using it, and where burning out plays in with that is what I'd like to talk about. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, there you go. Stay tuned for that in the next musings, folks. For now, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for anyone tuning in live, and for those listening at home after hours after the podcast has ended. But be well wherever you are in the world. So for now, goodbye.
Adios.
Arrivederci. Ciao. Nos vemos.
Tschüss.
Good. Bueno.
Bueno.
Good.
Nice. Oh, thank you everyone. Tom, I'm going to end the stream now, and until the next time. Peace.